86% of organizations value professionals that upskill to advance their careers. It's never too late. Enroll for a self-paced online course today and get to enjoy a 10% discount. Our courses are monitoring, evaluation, accountability and learning, water, sanitation and hygiene, disaster risk reduction and management, food security and nutrition in emergencies, procurement and supply chain management, human nutrition and dietetics, maternal and infant young child nutrition.
Moderator for the day. And with us, we have our expert for the day, Georgina, who is a procurement specialist. Before we dive into the introductions and the salutations, I'd like to start with a few house rules. So house rule number 1, make good use of the chat section. Let us know where you're joining us from. You can say hello to us. If you have any comment, please do share in the chat section. Only the panelists do see the chat, so you can feel free to share your contact details if you'd like to get in touch with us in regarding to any of our courses, or if you'd like to get in touch with us to learn more about Humanitarian Global. Rule number 2 is make good use of the Q&A section. During this webinar, Georgina will be able to make a very good presentation on understanding supply chain resilience and risk management in the humanitarian field. And if you have any questions in regards to that, do make good use of the Q&A section. And at the end of her presentation, she'll be able to take a few questions. With that said, at the end of the session, when Georgina does take a few questions, we will ask a couple of participants to ask questions live. So at this point, kindly raise your hand and we will be able to allow you to unmute and ask your question. So as I said, this is a webinar hosted by Humanitarian Global, and I would like to welcome the team here at Humanitarian Global, just to say hello to everyone. We do have with us Anthony. Anthony, you can say hello to the team.
Thank you so much, Diana, and good morning, good afternoon, and also good evening, based on where you might be connecting from. My name is Anthony Mukui from Humanitarian Global. I'm here for technical support and assistance. In case you have any challenge when it comes to the audio, the presentation, you can always chat with us on the chat section and we would be there to assist you. So looking forward to a great session, and also remember to share the link with your colleagues, with your friends, so that they can also join and get to learn and study and also follow up with the session with us today. So thank you so much, and looking forward to a great session. So back to you, Diana.
Thank you so much. With us also, we do have Ian. Ian, over to you.
Thank you, Diana. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our session today. As mentioned, my name is Ian. I represent the business development team at Humanitarian Global, and I do look forward to a resourceful session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. At this point, I'd like to welcome Georgina just to say hello to the team. She's our expert for the day in procurement. Georgina, say hello.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me. My name is Georgina Kaaria. I would like to wish everyone on call a happy Eid al-Adha, my Muslim brothers, and I look forward to sharing this session with you. And I look forward to it being interactive and educative as well. Thank you, Diana.
Thank you so much. So before we dive into today's very interesting topic, understanding supply chain resilience and risk management in the humanitarian field, as I did mention, this webinar is hosted by Humanitarian Global. So I would like to just mention who Humanitarian Global is, just in one sentence. So primarily, we are a training institute, and we do train those in the humanitarian humanitarian field, development field, as well as aid. And we've been able to build a platform that does support humanitarians and those in the humanitarian field, as well as organizations in the humanitarian field. And this has been through our trainings in monitoring, evaluation, water sanitation and hygiene, procurement and supply chain management, anything to do with nutrition and dietetics, as well as other programs such as disaster risk reduction, management, and anything else in the humanitarian field, such as what you can see on the screen. Are you able to see my screen? Kindly confirm.
Not yet, Diana. You may try to reshare again.
Okay, so what you can see on my screen, yes, I believe now you're able to see that. This is proposal writing, proposal and report writing. So we do have short courses such as this, and they're not just individual courses, they are also courses for organizations. So this is a 1-month online course. By online, I mean you get to be in a virtual classroom where you interact with the trainer. And this is an upcoming course on proposal and report writing. And during this course, you get to understand what proposals are. You get to understand an introduction, rather the basics of proposals, including formatting, preparing proposals. You get to understand what donor needs, the funding of proposals, how they go about it, including how to make pitch decks. From there, you'll be able to get a deeper understanding of writing a proposal or a report. And this is including the 5, normally in every proposal, we do have 5 topics. So you'll be able to go about the 5 topics in these proposals, which include the design. You get to understand the rationale behind proposals. You get to understand even the risk analysis you do during proposals, as well as creating a methodology and a work plan for your proposal and reports. And this also includes budgeting, which is a very important bit when it comes to proposal writing. Then you get to understand best practices. You get to have a look at case studies and best practices on proposals. You get to understand the common mistakes that are done. You get to understand how to make your proposal more successful, and as well as I've mentioned, case studies of successful proposals. So this online course is going for $250. Remember, I told you it's going to be a virtual classroom for 1 month, and at the end of this 1 month, you will get digital certification on HPERS on this course on proposal and report writing. So if you are interested in this course, you simply come and click apply now and fill out a form, or you come and click request callback, and our team will be able to reach out to you. Alternatively, you can make good use of this chat section. Let us know you're interested in undertaking this course, and we'll be able to guide you on registration. We'll be able to guide you on onboarding, as well as when the classes will begin. They're due to begin in this coming month, the month of July. So kindly make sure, if you're interested in this course, do reach out to us. Normally, we take a maximum of 10 participants per virtual class. And the reason for this is so that you can be able to interact with the trainer, so that you can be able to understand the subject matter, so that you can, even when you're acquiring those skills, you're able to make good use of those skills. And we can see you transfer those skills, be it in your workplace, be it in school, or even in your day-to-day life. So like I mentioned, it's 10 participants, and it's always first come, first serve. As I've said, if you are interested in joining this class, this virtual class, let us know in the chat section, and we'll be able to reach out to you with more details. At this time, I'd like to welcome Georgina. As I did mention, today's webinar is on procurement and supply chain management, and the topic for the day is understanding supply chain resilience and risk management in the humanitarian field. Georgina, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Diana. Once again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending from where you're tuning in from. And I hope you're enjoying your day so far. So I hope you can all see my screen. Yes, I believe it's visible now. Okay, so we are going to quickly have a look at understanding supply chain resilience and also understanding risk management, more especially or more concentrated in the humanitarian field, okay? And I look forward to impacting as much information to you today through these two topics. So what we are going to look at today will basically be how do you identify and assess supply chain risks, the strategies for building a proper supply chain resilience. We are also going to look at supplier risk management and a bit of contingency planning. How do you go about that in order to ensure that you have proper supply chain resilience within your organization? And also, finally, we are going to have a look at the lessons learned from the recent supply chain disruptions. So without taking much of your time, I want us to understand what we mean when we say supply chain resilience. So basically being resilient is being able to withstand any external or internal influences or environmental factors that tend to inhibit your daily running of operations. So in the supply chain, it's basically the ability of your organization, humanitarian or not, to withstand and recover any disruptions that might happen to its natural running of its day-to-day activities, or it being able to achieve its mission and objectives, okay? So this ensures that in the event of natural disasters, are they still able to maintain a proper flow of essential goods and services? In the event of conflicts, yeah? As an organization, assuming that you're in the hospitality field, are you still able to get your foods and products to your customers, okay? So this involves basically building robust systems and processes to ensure that you have continuity even in the face of adversity. So when we say that your supply chain has been disrupted, what are the pillars? Basically, what holds supply chain to be effective? Yeah, we need to ensure that we have a good collaboration. Yeah, so these are what we call the pillars that ensure a resilient supply chain. They are basically collaboration, a good design of your supply chain, and of course, a good management culture of your supply chain, and of course, agility within your supply chain. So once you have all this in check and working effectively, then your organization is said to have a transparent supply chain that has continuous monitoring and intelligence, and therefore you're able to withstand any adverse environment that you might be in, ensuring that even if a natural calamity happens, as an organization, you're still able to deliver your end product at the end of the day, and you're able to fulfill your mission and objectives as an organization. So today we are going to look at risk factors. If these pillars, if something happens to any of these pillars, how do we identify those risks? How are we able to mitigate them? And how can we ensure that our organization is able to set up these particular pillars to ensure that no matter what happens, we are still able to continue with the usual running of our business. So some of the key aspects that we need to consider, okay. So how do you identify and assess some of these risks? So first of all, what you need to consider is your supply chain. How does your supply chain look like as an organization? Yeah. So most NGOs, the supply chain is actually very short. The money comes from the donors, then the procurement department will have to do the sourcing, the logistics department does the distribution, and then it goes to the recipients. So that is a very short supply chain. However, it is very critical and complex, despite it looking so simple. So as an organization, you need to understand where is the bulk of your weight when it comes to your supply chain. Is it in the sourcing and distribution? Or if you're not an NGO, is it in the manufacturing and then the distribution of your items? So in this particular case, since we are concentrating mostly in the humanitarian field, we are going to concentrate mostly on the sourcing and the distribution aspect of our supply chain for you to be able to understand. For example, if you are working in, let's take, for example, Somali, yeah? You need to be able to know if our donors, if the UN is part of our donors and we need to acquire some of these materials, are we able to acquire them within the country, or do we have to source them from outside the country? What risks are involved if we are to source them from outside the country? Are we going to face either importation risks, financial risk, transportation risks to whichever part of Somaliland that we are trying to distribute those items to? So these are some of the things that you need to look at for you to be able to understand what kind of risks you're facing with. So once you understand your supply chain, once you get the money, once you get the need that you're trying to solve within your community, how those items will get to those people, that once you understand that process, then you'll be able to better project the risks that you're going to face, and you'll be able to mitigate them before they happen. Okay, so as you can see from the photo, commercial supply chains are much more wider, which means the risk is a bit more distributed before the items get to the recipient and while sourcing for the items. But for the NGO, it's a very short supply chain, and therefore most of the risk is concentrated between the sourcing and the distribution aspect of it. Yeah. So mapping the supply chain is one of the key aspects that you need to consider before you identify and you assess the risk areas within your supply chain. Something else you also need to consider, of course, will be your risk identification. Like I've mentioned, once you understand what once you map out your supply chain, then you'll be able to understand, if I am sourcing for these goods, assuming you're seated in Somali, you're sourcing for these goods outside the country, you will need to understand what risks do you face. If there are security risks, what are you going to do about it? Yes. Some time back, Somali was a highly volatile country. Right now, things have settled down a bit. But in those times, the NGOs operating in that particular market had to understand there might be an uncertainty in delivery. How do we go about that? Do we bring our goods through Kenya? Do we bring our goods through Ethiopia? Or how do we ensure that we have delivery at the time that we need? Another risk they faced is security risk, of course. When transporting the goods from, let's say, from the offices, maybe to Puntland or something, the environment, the zones, yeah, the transportation from point A to point B, how did they go about that? So those are some of the risks as well that you need to be able to identify and have a mitigating factor or aspect, and get to know that in the event there's no much security, are we willing to get armed forces to accompany us, or are we willing to look for alternative routes for us to be able to get to our customers, or what plan do we have in place? Okay, so another risk that you might also face is the coordination and information sharing. You might find that due to the location of our humanitarian organizations, sometimes there are communication lapses. Sometimes communication might drop, yeah? And you're not able to know what is going on where and at what time. In such a case, does the organization have a backup plan? Who is seated in Nairobi? What can you do while you're still seated in the country where you are? What other steps are you able to take to ensure that you still achieve your end goal? Yeah. Something else also humanitarians face a lot is human resources. Sometimes there's not enough skilled staff to be deployed to certain areas, maybe because they are considered high-risk areas and maybe nobody wants to go there. Yes. And also you might find maybe volunteers also are not willing to be deployed to such areas. So as an organization, what do you do about this? So you need to think outside the box. You need to think in terms of, do we train local staff? Do we offer incentives to our staff? Or how can we make the area a bit more secure for us to be able to have skilled staff within the area? Do we conduct online trainings to be able to skill the staff within the area? Or how do we go about mitigating this particular kind of risk? Okay. Something else is also the financial aspect to it. Most of our money as humanitarian or NGOs, they come from donors. And sometimes you might find we have a project for the year 2024, but we don't have the money to achieve that project, yes? Or maybe our donor has already accepted that they are going to fund us, but maybe there's a delay in disbursing that money. So how do we go about it? How do we mitigate this kind of risk that will, but still ensure that we deliver efficiently to our customers? Yeah. And then finally, of course, we need to look at the ethical and legal compliance. We cannot exist in countries that are not in line with our mission and vision. Yeah, we also need to ensure that even if we set up base in certain places or certain countries, we are still working in line with their statutories. Yeah, for example, if the UN was to set up in Kenya, it knows all the bylaws of our country. It knows what needs to be done and what rules they need to follow. If it's salary, if it's security, if it's other international relations, we need to be able to be in line with any rules of a certain country. So for us as humanitarians to be able to build a better resilient supply chain, we need to be able to understand these risks. We need to be able to identify them clearly and be able to come up with mitigation strategies for them. So just to ensure we are together, our first step is to map out our supply chain. After we've mapped it out, we identify the risks involved. So after we've identified the risks involved, what else do we get to do? We get to assess those risks. Yes. Let's not use Somali this time. Let's say Kenya, for example. Lately, we've had some clashes in a part of Kenya called Lamu. So let's take an example. We have our society set up in Lamu. Now, when we're assessing risk, we need to look at the likelihood of the risk happening versus the impact it will have on us running our day-to-day activities and ensuring our efficiency is not impacted. So we have a security risk, like I've said. If we look at the likelihood of it happening in that area of Kenya called Lamu, it is likely to happen a lot, yeah? And security, how does it impact your delivery of goods or services to your client? It definitely has a very severe impact, because if you have low security, it means either your goods can be hijacked or your people can be hurt or killed on the way to deliver your goods. So it's a very severe impact on the delivery of your goods and services. In some organizations, it could be considered a critical impact. So when you assess your risk according to the risk assessment metrics, you find that security is a very high risk. So when you assess all your risks like that, you take security, assess it, finance, you assess it according to the matrix, human resource, you assess it as well. So you'll be able to arrange your risks according to the very high risks, the medium, the low, and the very low ones, yeah? Then you'll be able to concentrate on your more important risks and how to mitigate them, yeah? So risk assessment assists you to prioritize your risks for you to be able to allocate appropriate resources to be able to mitigate them and for you to be able to ensure that you have a proper running of your supply chain. After you've done your risk assessment, then you do your data analysis and modeling. So sometimes you find that some of this data is gotten from the historical patterns. Like the example I've just given of Lamu, which is in Kenya, you find that from history, they'll probably have clashes. Let's take, for example, in the month of June, they've had clashes. The last time they had clashes was in 2022, November. Yeah, so you're able to see this area normally has disruptions every 6 months or every 1 year or every 5 years. So from that historical pattern and trend, you're able to understand when is the best time to infiltrate a certain area, or when is the best time maybe to import your goods, or when is the best time to allocate resources to a certain area for you to be able not to disrupt your supply chain. Yeah. So those are the 4 considerations that you should be able to make for you to be able to identify and analyze the risk areas within your supply chain. Okay. So moving along. So what strategies do you use for you to be able to build supply chain resilience? Yeah. So strategies are methods or ways that you'll be able to undertake for you to be able to enhance your resilience. Yeah. Some of the things that we mostly use as supply chain people is ensuring that we have redundancy and flexibility. So in the supply chain sector, what do we mean by applying redundancy and flexibility? What we mean is being able to have multiple suppliers, yeah, and production facilities and distribution channels. When we were mapping out our supply chain in the NGO, we've noticed that it's a very short supply chain. It's from the donor to the sourcing, to distribution, to the recipient. Sometimes, just to be safe, you might find that most NGOs and international NGOs probably have 5 to 10 people, or maybe just a few people whom they like interacting with. But in the event of a disruption, do they have a backup plan? Yeah. And this is where redundancy and flexibility comes in. We need to be able to have multiple suppliers to be able to supply our need. Yeah. For example, let's take, for example, the recent COVID-19 disruption. We had most of the people were looking at China for their production, for their manufacturing. Everything basically came from China. But once the COVID hit, there was a lot of transportation that was cut and supply went from 100 to 0. Now, if we had flexibility as organizations, and assuming we had multiple suppliers, either from our neighboring countries or even within the country, this kind of disruption would not have affected our day-to-day activities. Yes. Something else also is having various distribution channels. If we only look at shipping from China really made the world be a little bit crippled, sorry to say. But assuming that we looked at other factors like air travel, you see, if we looked at other distribution channels, we will still know, despite shipping not being able to happen, if we use the railway system, if we use air travel, if we use the road transportation, we will still be able to deliver our goods and services to the people around us. This is both locally and internationally, okay? So another strategy you can use is also collaboration and communication. When, as supply chain individuals, as procurement people, we interact with so many people on a day-to-day basis, yeah? And some people, we have strategic relationships, others we just have basic transactional relationships, yeah? And I know you're wondering what is the difference. So when we say we have strategic relationships, these are long-term, strong relationships. These are people who, in as much as they're supplying us with goods and services, we also want them to understand that we are in it for the long run, yeah? There are people who have put our best interest as an organization at heart. In the event there's innovation, they are willing to consider us first. And also they understand our they understand our ordering system. If we have good collaboration and communication with our suppliers, they'll be able to foresee in the month of June, maybe for example, the World Vision in Ethiopia maybe needs a ton of gloves, a ton of emergency blankets, and they'll be able to stock that for you in advance. And when you give them the PO, they'll just be able to deliver to you. This is what good collaboration and communication means, as opposed to having a transactional relationship whereby you just pick up the phone or just drop an email to your supplier and just tell them deliver XYZ, and they just deliver and the communication ends there. Once you pay them, you're done with them until the next time you need that item. So as supply chain and procurement professionals, for us to have a more resilient supply chain, we really need to build on our communication and collaboration with our suppliers. Yeah, good. Something else we also need to do is have a proper supply chain visibility. Yes, this marries into the communication. We need to be able to know if we are all seated in Ethiopia, yeah, and probably the head office of our NGO is in Addis, we need to be able to know what are the stock levels of, let's say, for example, emergency blankets. What are the stock levels that we have? You're able to monitor the ordering levels, the stock levels when they're about to finish, when they have been distributed to the other field offices. Also for you to be able to understand and plan yourself within the year, yes? Supply chain visibility also assists you to monitor your supplier performance. It doesn't matter whether you're seated in Addis Ababa or not. You'll be able to know our supplier of emergency blankets is a good supplier. Why? Because once you reach the minimum order levels, you're able to see that they supplied more blankets and therefore you're not at the risk of running out. Yeah. And then also good visibility assists you to identify any bottlenecks. Assuming, for example, you're probably doing a tender. Yeah. According to the threshold within your organization, a tender above $10 million probably needs to be an open tender. But the processes involved within the procurement and supply chain department, some of them are either repetitive or they are not fully engaging the suppliers within the market. So as somebody if you have a visible supply chain, then you're able to identify some of these people, maybe who have been invited to this particular tender, do not even understand what, let's say, for example, what emergency blankets are. And you see, that's a bottleneck for you being able to finish your tender early and being able to acquire your material and being able to distribute it to your people. So once you have a good supply chain visibility, you're able to identify some of these areas, and it will help you either to reduce some of the repetitive tasks. You'll be able to remove some of the underperforming suppliers from your supplier list, and you'll also be able to have a better track of your inventory levels to avoid overstocking and understocking. Yeah, and as a result, again, it contributes to the resilience of your supply chain because you will not be caught flat-footed in the event of any disruption. Yeah. Then finally, you'll also be able to have proper risk mitigation plans. Yeah. When you look at your risk assessment metrics, like we've just seen, and probably you identify a risk that is considered unacceptable. Yeah, maybe a risk like stockout. A stockout risk is totally unacceptable in any organization. So what risk mitigation plan do you have for that particular kind of risk? Yeah, you see, when you have supply chain visibility and you're able to monitor your stock levels, then you'll be able to do something we call inventory optimization. You'll be able to know how much inventory at any given time do I need to hold for me to avoid a stockout risk. Yeah. So once you understand all your risks and you're able to prioritize them according to their impact on your organization, then you'll be able to come up with proper risk mitigation plans. Yeah. And that is a strategy to assist you have a more resilient supply chain. In the humanitarian field, something else, like I've mentioned, we need to consider is capacity building. When we were looking at risk identification, we mentioned human resource as part of a risk within the humanitarian field. So capacity building is also something we need to understand and look at when we say that we want to build a better supply chain within the better supply chain resilience within the humanitarian field. So we need to be able to develop our staff and our partners. Yeah, I mentioned you need to think outside the box. You need to know for you to be able to ensure that you have skilled staff in whatever field office that you have. Do you need to incentivize your volunteers? Do you need to look at the surrounding community, maybe train a few people, you know, because this will ensure that you have continuity in case of anything. In case maybe your skilled staff are not able to travel to the site of location, it ensures that the local staff who is there are also able to carry out your organizational objectives. So capacity building is also something else we need to consider if we want to build a proper supply chain resilience within our organizations. Something else we want to look at is the supplier risk management and contingency planning. Yeah, you remember when we started, I said the first thing we're going to look at is identifying and analyzing the risks that we face within the supply chain. And also we are going to look at supplier risk management and contingency planning. So why are we concentrating on supplier risk management? It is because suppliers are the basis of our supply chain. Without suppliers, without us being able to get our goods and services, then we cannot have a supply chain, because what will we be delivering? We cannot deliver air and we cannot give imaginary services. So everything starts with our suppliers, and we need to be able to look at them as a risk and be able to manage them and have contingency plans in place. So when we're looking at supplier risk management, what are we considering? We need to consider our supplier selection and evaluation, okay? So depending on what it is that we are delivering, let's take, for example, an NGO that delivers maybe food to children in areas that maybe have drought, areas that have political instability. Yeah, so when they're selecting suppliers and evaluating these suppliers, they need to be able to know, is this supplier able to deliver 1,000 tons of dried maize or dried beans within a particular period of time? Yeah, so they need to be able to consider factors like capacity. What capacity does this supplier have to deliver our needs? Do they have the proper financial stability? Yeah, you remember we looked at funding as a risk within the NGO world. Assuming that your donor has not yet credited your account, is the supplier able to finance the PO themselves, be able to supply you goods on credit? Yeah, so you need to look at the financial stability of the supplier as well. Are they able to give you good quality items in the required quantities? For example, if we had a heat wave, I don't know if we've ever had heat waves in Africa, but if we had a heat wave and maybe you needed to mitigate the community around, you needed to build them emergency homes, give them food, maybe give them proper shelter and things like that. The suppliers that you work with, are they able to deliver to the acceptable quality and standards that have been outlined within your organization? Yeah, so you need to look at that as well. And again, the geographical location of the supplier. Are they available, let's say, for example, are they available in Somalia or in Sudan, to be able to ensure that those goods and services reach the people in those particular villages and communities that have been affected. Yeah. So supplier selection is a critical aspect in mitigating supplier risk management. Yeah. Something else you need to look at is supplier diversification. If you rely on one particular supplier, the chances of you facing a supply chain disruption are very high. Why? Because look at it this way. This particular supplier might face a period where maybe they don't have enough material to deliver to your needs, or maybe they don't have enough money to supply to your particular order, or maybe they just have quality issues in the environment they're operating in, and maybe they've been shut down. So what will you do? Are you going to go to your people and tell them, our supplier didn't have enough dried maize, or their maize had aflatoxin, and as a result, we could not accept it, and therefore we don't have anything to deliver? Well, you've already failed and you don't have supply chain resilience, sorry. So you need to diversify your suppliers. You need to avoid relying on a single supplier. And this is normally done when you do your supplier selection, yeah? When you're evaluating your supplier in terms of capacity, financial stability, quality, geographical location, you're going to be able to prioritize them according to the highest, the supplier who's met the most of the criteria, and you're able to prioritize them maybe number 1, 2, 3, like that, yeah? Then as an organization, you can decide to select the top 3. So if you have a category, let's say a category for emergency blankets, yeah, then you have at least 3 suppliers. You have your main supplier and your backup suppliers. That way, you have a diversification. In case one fails, you're able to go to the next person to deliver for you. And as a result, you're able to reduce the disruption within your supply chain, yeah? Something else you need to do to reduce your supplier risk is have proper supplier collaboration. In the slide before, we've talked about collaboration and communication, yeah? So you need to have a proper relationship with your suppliers. You need to be able to be in good terms with them. Just don't instigate communication with them only when you need something. It needs to be an all year round open communication, yeah? In some organizations, you're even allowed to invite them to your, for example, maybe to your Christmas parties, or maybe to, when you're commissioning a new project, you're able to invite your suppliers. This builds on your supplier collaboration, makes you have a better communication with them, breaks down the walls, any walls that might be there, yeah? And as a result, they're also able to share any challenges they're facing, and you're also able to move forward together once you have that good supplier collaboration. Let's take, for example, in the event that your supplier A has already failed in delivering your dried goods, then you go to your supplier B. If you have a good relationship with them, they are going to go above and beyond to ensure that you get whatever items you're looking for, because it doesn't matter whether they are the first respondent or the second respondent. As long as you have a good relationship with all your suppliers, then they will always be willing to help you when you need their help. And as a result, you'll always be able to deliver and not have a disruption within your supply chain, yeah? Then finally, you also need to have contingency planning. Contingency planning is what we've talked about this far. Always have a plan B. In the event plan A does not work, always have a plan B. If it's in terms of suppliers, have an alternative supplier. If it's in terms of stock, always have safety stock. In as much as you have inventory optimization and you're able to know, I need to hold X pieces of emergency blankets at a given time. You also need to know, in as much as I have 1,000 emergency blankets, my safety stock is maybe another 1,000, because anything can happen at any given time, yeah? So that is also part of contingency planning. Something else you also need to do is, as an organization, you need to have supplier development programs to enhance their resilience. Some organizations tend to ask for supplier policies, to understand any measures or any steps the supplier has implemented within the organization, maybe to ensure that they have enough raw materials at any given time. So as an organization also, you can work hand in hand with them to educate them, or rather to help them be more resilient as well. Because once your supplier is resilient, then also yourself as an organization, you will be equally resilient and you'll not have any disruptions with the day-to-day running of your organization. I hope that is clear up to there. So this far, up to the year 2022, what have we learned from the most recent supply chain is not disrupted? So some of the critical lessons we've learned and that we've looked at throughout this webinar is diversification. Diversification is very crucial when it comes to our supply chain resilience. We need to avoid over-reliance of a single source or location, because anything can happen to that location, which is very risky. Like what happened to China. It was very risky and it almost crippled the whole world. But right now you find that maybe some people have maybe gone to Turkey for manufacturing. Some are even manufacturing right here in Africa. For example, like in Kenya, we've opened so many industries because we've realized that we need to diversify and avoid over-reliance on a single source or a single location. Something else we've also learned from the recent disruption is that we need to enhance our visibility and analytics. So gone are the days where only the supply chain department or the procurement department used to be involved, used to do some of these decisions. For example, know how much stock to hold, know which suppliers to work with. Right now, what we have learned is this needs to be open to the whole organization and to management especially. We need to be able to adopt e-procurement systems that are able to project or optimize our inventory levels. We need to be able to incorporate our stakeholders. They might have insights that we don't have necessarily as supply chain individuals. We've also learned to incorporate other aspects of the organization. For example, we are able to look at the sales numbers, assuming that you're working in a commercial environment. You're able to incorporate the sales numbers into your procurement for you to be able to know how much to order or how much to pay a particular supplier for you to be able to improve your profitability. Other lessons we've learned is also collaboration and information sharing. This is very important in the modern day world. A proper free flow of information for you to be able to know what's happening, what's available where, what is the best price, how are you able to deliver your goods and services in a timely manner to your people? And in the event that, unfortunately, due to uncontrollable issues, that your supply chain is disrupted, how do you best recover from that? So collaboration even with your peers within the industry. Let's say, for example, different agencies of the UN, they can work together, collaborate and share information. They can step in for each other, which builds better relationships and creates trust and reduces mitigation. Something else recent disruption has taught us is how to be resilient and flexible in inventory management. Remember, we looked at agility as one of the pillars of a proper supply chain resilience. So such approaches are like, for example, the just-in-time approach, which is mostly used in manufacturing industry. Maybe vendor-managed inventory, again, mostly used in the manufacturing industry, but could be incorporated in the humanitarian world. The recent supply chain disruptions have taught us that we need to start adopting such styles of inventory management, to ensure that whenever we are faced with a challenge, we are able to mitigate it as fast as possible, Something else is also doing proper risk assessment and contingency planning. The COVID crisis really opened up most of our eyes. Most organizations never used to do a lot of risk assessment, but with the pandemic, you're able to see that we are able to better identify our risks, better prioritize them, and have better contingency planning. So risk assessment and contingency planning is another lesson that we have learned with the recent disruption that we have been facing in the current world. Something else we've also learned is continuous monitoring and adaptation. And we have seen this, that once the 4 pillars of supply chain are properly running, then as an organization, you're able to have continuous monitoring and adaptation, which leads to you having a better supply chain resilience. How does this help you? It helps you monitor the gaps that you might be having within your supply chain, Assuming maybe, let's say, for example, if you have a transportation risk, you're working in a very remote area, let's say, for example, a remote area in Sudan, and you've identified a transportation risk, maybe maybe there are some groups of people within that area who make the environment to be unsafe. If you do continuous monitoring, you're able to know, then we should no longer be using this route. Maybe we can adapt and start using another route for us to be still able to reach our intended clientele within a particular community. So you continuously need to monitor your systems. You continuously need to understand what you're doing right and where you're going wrong. Why are you going wrong? And what can you do better for you to be able to mitigate that particular gap that you're facing? Something else that we've also learned from the recent disruption is what logistics people call reshoring and nearshoring of critical supply chains. So what does this mean? When beginning, I gave an example of us getting a lot of our material from the East, from China and the other countries, So that there was a lot of offshoring in such a particular incident. But now, after that particular disruption, you find that most people have realized we can open up industries within our country or with our neighboring countries. I've given an example of my country, Kenya. We've opened factories and some manufacturing, the manufacturing industry is really picking up. Why? Because we realize that we need to create our own supply chain from within. We cannot keep on looking outside to be able to get our critical essential items, And this has helped us maybe reduce on our lead times. It has also helped us reduce on our transportation costs, and also it has helped us reduce on other geographical political risks that we were facing before, So this is something else also supply chain people have looked at, bringing manufacturing nearer to them, Okay. So finally, as we wind up, what factors can we consider to have a better understanding of the concepts that affect us or affect our supply chain resilience, So in the humanitarian world, for us to be able to understand better, or for us to be able to identify better what aspects we need to consider to make our supply chain more resilient, we need to look at it, one, at a local context, In as much as, let's say, for example, the parent body might be seated in the Americas, the field office is located in Addis Ababa. We people who are seated in Ethiopia are the ones who understand how operations run within the locality of the country we are in, So we need to be able to understand What is the cultural background of the people in the country we are seated in? What are the environmental factors that are affecting us in the particular local area that we are seated in? And what is the socio-political aspect of that? Yeah. When in school, we learned about something called the PESTEL analysis, which is mostly the political, environmental, social, technological aspects of analyzing what is going on around you. So we need to understand it from a local perspective and incorporate it into our organizational policies. This way, we will be able to build a better resilient company, not only in supply chain, but the company as a whole. Yeah. Then we also need to understand the conflict sensitivity. This again is married to the local context of the organization, of the area that we are operating in. Yeah, we need to understand, for example, if we are operating in Kenya, Kenya is relatively peaceful. Yeah, so we need to know what is the conflict sensitivity in Kenya. Are the transportation routes open? Is it easy to access the affected population? What are the potential risks associated maybe with visiting marginalized areas in Kenya? So you need to understand such conflict sensitivities, yeah? Depending again on the country where you're seated in. It will also help you be able to identify and analyze the risks involved in affecting your supply chain continuation. Yeah. Then you also need to understand your local capacity building. Remember, we've looked at human resource as a major risk that is affecting our supply chain resilience. Now, for you to understand better what risks you're facing, you need to look at it from the local perspective. Do you need to train local individuals about the supply chain management within your area of operation? Or what do you need to do to better understand how things run within that particular locality? Yeah, so you need to understand your local capacity building. Do you need to sit with the local logistics people? Do you need to sit down with the local suppliers? Because then again, remember, if you're working, let's say, for example, if you're working in Kenya and most of your suppliers are foreign suppliers, in the event they are affected and they cannot deliver for you, you're going to come back to the local market to look for supply. Assuming you've never had that relationship with the local people, it will not be easy for you to be able to achieve or to be able to get the items that you're looking for. And this is why you need to create a good local capacity building, collaborate with the local people, collaborate with the local suppliers, understand the local policies, yeah, for you to better be able to identify the risks and assess them and have proper mitigation plans in place. Then again, of course, you need to do your local market analysis. Let the local people or the local suppliers be your number one, yeah? Unless, of course, you're procuring items that are specialized to certain areas of the world. For example, during the COVID-19, the vaccines were only available from certain countries. So in such cases, you're allowed to procure from outside. But in cases where the local market is able to meet your demand, the local market or the local suppliers are able to meet your need, it is advisable that you do proper market analysis and you be able to create proper relationships. And also you'll be amazed that you'll get better pricing and efficient transportation to your end users. Yeah. Why? Because the local people will cut down costs for you. Transportation costs, for example, availability of goods and services is much easier. Yeah, you'll be able to cut down on some of these things. The lead times, when you source from the local market that you're stationed in, you're able to cut down on so many of these things, and you're able to ensure that you have a more resilient supply chain. Yeah, you're able to efficiently deliver your goods and your services. Then, of course, the technology and the innovation. Yeah. So in some NGOs, probably the technology and innovation aspect might not apply. But if you're working in a commercial field, you need to be able to incorporate technology and innovation within your supply chain. Remember, we've said that you need to have proper inventory optimization. Sometimes you need to incorporate maybe the e-procurement system, incorporate analysis or tabulation programs that are able to project certain things for you, yeah, for you to have better data analytics, for you to have real-time monitoring and evaluation of maybe how your project is going on, or maybe how your goods are being transported to a certain area. So you need to be able to embrace some of these technological advancements and innovations within the supply chain. Yeah. So that's it for today. So we can take any questions that you might be having when it comes to supply chain resilience and risk management.
Thank you so much, Georgina, and thank you to all our participants. We see you're very active in the chat section. If you have any questions, kindly do put them in the Q&A section. Georgina, you can have a look there. Right now, as I give Georgina just a minute to take a breather, because it was a very good presentation. Georgina, kindly allow me to share my screen. What I would like to mention is this was a very short webinar, 1 hour webinar, and we do have extensive courses on procurement and supply chain management. So we do have courses that range all the way from certificate, as you can see on the screen, to diploma and postgraduate diploma in procurement and supply chain management. I have shared a link with you on the chat section. Do join us for these courses. They are online self-paced course. So unlike the one I talked about on proposal and report writing, for these kind of courses, we do take self-paced online course. However, you still get to engage with our experts, including Georgina, through virtual classes here and there. We do have what we call moderation sessions, where if you have a question or maybe there's a topic you didn't understand, you can always have a moderation session with our experts, our trainers, and they'll be able to take you through those topics. We also do have virtual classes and webinars as well, such as this on the same. So if you're interested in taking any of our courses in procurement and supply chain management, as I did mention, we also do offer certificates, diplomas, and postgraduate diplomas on that. So kindly, we have shared a link with you on the chat section. You can click on that link and register. Alternatively, you can share your details with us and our team will be able to reach out. Right now, we're going to go directly into the Q&A session, and I do apologize. I see we are 5 minutes beyond time. We will take sort of 10 minutes just to be able to answer your questions. I do see there's a few questions here, Georgina, so maybe we can start with James's question. And at this moment also, I'd like to welcome participants who would like to ask a question live during this session. Kindly do raise your hand and we'll be able to allow you to speak. Georgina, have a look at James. James has shared a question, talks about the 10 C's supply selection. So for supply selection, are the 10 C's supply selection and evaluation method, is it the best approach for this? Georgina, over to you.
Okay, so the 10 C's of supplier selection. So yes, they are very suitable when assessing and selecting a supplier. Yeah. Well, best is a matter of the organization that you're actually working with, but they are very detailed, yeah? Because when you look at it, what do the 10 C's stand for? Stands for competency. How competent is the supplier? Do they have the skilled staff that you need? Yeah. They also look at capacity. Like we've mentioned within the webinar, does the supplier have enough capacity? Do they have enough raw materials, enough goods, enough services to be able to meet your need? Yeah. Then it also considers commitment. How committed is the supplier to working with you as an organization? Yeah. Do they have your best interest at heart? Yeah. Are they willing to go above and beyond to ensure that they deliver to you your intended goods and services? Yes. Something else the 10 C's look at is control. Does the supplier have proper quality and quality control within the organization? Are they able to ensure that they deliver you with standard items and not substandard items? Yeah. Then it also looks at the financial stability, or rather the cash stability of your supplier. Do they have enough money to run without you necessarily having to give deposits or to pay 100% in advance? Yeah. Then it also looks at the cost aspect of your supplier. Are they giving you the best price for whatever item it is? So are you getting value for your money? That is also something else very critical that you need to consider when you're evaluating and selecting your supplier. Yeah. And are they the 7th C, if I'm not wrong, I think we're at number 7, is consistency. Are they consistent in ensuring that they deliver you with the intended goods and services? If you need emergency blankets every 3 months, are they consistent in doing that? Or are they going to deliver for the first 2 months and then the 3rd month they start giving you excuses? So those are some of the things you also need to consider. Then culture, the 8th one should be culture. What is the culture of the organization? Yeah. Is it in line with your culture as well? And this is where now the local context comes in. Remember, we've looked at you as a supply chain and procurement professional, you need to understand the local context that you're actually operating in. What is the culture of those suppliers? Are they people who you're going to call on a Thursday afternoon and they tell you, I'm sorry, we are closed? You need to understand, is the working culture of the organization able to integrate with your culture? Yeah. Do they treat their staff well? Do they pay on time? Do they overwork their staff? Those are some of the aspects you need to look at when considering the culture of an organization. Yeah. Then again, do they have the proper maybe statutory documents? Yeah. Are they clean? By clean, we mean either do they have proper documentation, which means they're not a fraudulent company, and also in terms of waste into the environment, yeah? Because you find most NGOs are very big in sustainability of the environment. Does this supplier also consider such aspects? Are they going green? Do they support the environment? Do they give back to the community? So those are some of the things you could also consider. And then finally, how is their communication? Are they good in communication, or are they the people who return an email 2 weeks later? Yeah. So James, yes. 10 C's, the 10 C's by Ray Carter. Let me just put that name in the chat box. So that is a good place to start when assessing the suitability of a potential supplier. Yeah. So question 2, how can we ensure the quality of the supply? In my experience, there are quality issues of humanitarian supply. Okay, so if I understand your question, you'd like to know how to ensure that you have proper, or rather standard items supplied to you as an organization. Well, this is where you have specifications coming in. yeah? When you're ordering items from your supplier, or rather if you're giving out a request for proposal or a request for a quotation, there's something that we call specifications. So a specification is basically giving your supplier a detailed explanation of what it is you're looking for, what it should be able to do. For example, basically laying out the minimum acceptable standards of whatever item or service it is that you're looking for, yeah? So it comes in 3 ways. So you have functional specifications, yeah? If, for example, you're procuring a printer, let's say, for example, you're procuring a printer. So what is the function? You need it to be able to do maybe photocopies, to be able to do scans, to be able to do black and white or maybe colored. That is the function of whatever item it is you're looking for. So if the supplier brings for you a printer and it's able to function and do the activities that you wanted it to do, then it has met your functional specifications, yeah? Then you have what we call the technical specifications, yeah? And this is why as supply chain and procurement people, we are rather encouraged to work very closely with the stakeholder. Yes. So let's say, for example, you're working with refugees. Let me take, for example, the Dadaab refugee camp in Kenya, Kakuma refugee camp in Kenya, yeah? And maybe, for example, you need something, maybe you need to take to them particular kinds of foods, maybe particular kinds of clothes, particular kinds of materials to build their houses. As a procurement person from where I'm seated, I am not a nutrition expert. I will not know what kind of food to take to them. I will not know what kind of clothes they need. I will not know what material needs to be used for their houses. And that is where you need to work very closely with the stakeholders, because a nutritionist will know what kind of food they need. And that is technical, yeah? That is their area of specialty. They should be able to advise you as the procurement person so that by the time you're putting out your tender in the market, yeah, you've been able to put every single parameter that is needed for the supplier to know, fine, I am supplying food to this organization, but it needs to be maybe of this nutritional value in this, maybe if it's sodium X, if it's potassium X, you know, such small things, yeah? The material properties and the energy requirements, you know, and any other operational requirements that are needed to that in that particular food, yeah? So a technical specification is also very important for you to have quality items delivered to you. Then again, finally, performance specifications, yeah? So for you to be able to ensure that you have actually gotten proper quality items, let's say, for example, the printer that I had given in the first example. So you've told your supplier you need a printer that can print and photocopy things. That is a function. Now, you need this printer maybe to be able to print 30 pages per minute. That is the performance at which you expect it to deliver at, yeah? So there is no way that supplier is going to bring you a printer that is printing 5 papers per minute. Definitely that is not meeting your performance specifications, and as a result, your quality or your output will be affected, yeah? So I hope I hope I've answered your question on how to ensure that you have proper quality within the humanitarian supply chain. Okay, that was anonymous. So John Bosco Lochan is asking, what systems can be put in place to prioritize risk management in the supply chain? Okay, so we have looked, when we were doing the webinar, we looked at the steps that you need to take, yeah? You need to be able to, first of all, map out your supply chain, yeah? Once you understand your supply chain, then you will be able to identify the risks involved. Yes. Now, once you identify your risks, we looked at various risks. We looked at security, human resource, financial, demand and supply disruption. We looked at various risks. So depending on what it is you're able to identify in your organization, then you do your risk assessment. Yeah. Then when you do your risk assessment, then you're able to prioritize which risk affects you as an organization much more than it affects, or rather, which risk is able to impact your organization more than the other risk. Let me rephrase that. When you assess your risks and you're able to prioritize them in terms of most urgent and least urgent, then you'll be able to come up with what we call mitigation strategies. Yeah. So it's not a particular system per se. However, it's a process that you need to follow. Yeah. You can put up a policy within your department, have a risk manual, a risk policy that is able to outline, in the event this happens, what it is we need to do. From where you're seated, John Bosco, you're the only one who knows how best, or rather, what is the system of communication within your organization. So you're the one who will be best informed to say, in the event of a security risk, which is a very high risk in my organization, what are the steps we need to follow to mitigate such a risk? Do we need to have alternative, maybe alternative transportation routes? Do we need to hire armed guards to accompany us to certain areas in the field? Or do we need to ensure that we maybe purchase we purchase from Nairobi instead of purchasing from Addis Ababa? Or what exactly do you need to do? So it's more of a process than a system, okay? And it starts with, of course, identifying and mapping your supply chain, then identifying the risks, assessing those risks, and coming up with proper mitigation processes. Yeah. I hope I've answered you on that. Okay.
Thank you so much, Georgina. I think in the interest of time, we will just allow 2 questions. So Arega, you can unmute yourself and ask your question. Welcome. Arega, are you with us? Musa, you can unmute yourself and ask the question. Hello, Musa, yes?
Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Just talk a little louder.
I am thanking you for your informations given us. And thank you the Humanitarian Global and the instructors that you are explaining for us, for me, more information. And always I connect here, and I am thanking the lecturers that give us the information. So let me down my question. What's the differences between contingency plan and feasibility study?
Thank you, Musa. Georgina, you'll take that question.
Thank you.
Yeah, so he's asking the difference between a contingency plan and a feasibility study. So mostly this happens in project management, but I'll just explain it. So a feasibility study is mostly done for you to be able to understand if a certain project or certain things are able to be done in the area that maybe you're looking at. Let's say, for example, you're in Hargeisa, yeah? And maybe you want to implement, what is it called? Maybe a water hole project, yeah, for the community around. So you're going to go to Hargeisa, and then you're going to maybe interact with the community around, visit the administration offices, look at the area around, and get to know if I'm to construct a water project or a watering hole in this particular community, how much will I spend? what do I need to do? What documents do I require? What are the safeguarding policies I need to follow, and will it be able to help the community and for how long? Yeah. So that is what we call a feasibility study, getting to know how best a certain project is suited for a certain community. Yeah. Now, a contingency plan. A contingency plan is looked at in terms of when your initial plan of making that watering hole fails. Yeah. So you've gone to Hargeisa, you've done your study, and then after you've done your analysis, you realize this actually cannot happen. Maybe the safeguarding, the risk in the environment is too high. Therefore, you can't take on that project. So what do you need to do? So a contingency plan is a plan B. Yeah. So in the event your initial plan of building a watering hole fails, what else can you do? So a contingency plan in this case might be something like you can set up water catchment areas. Maybe in the event it rains, then you're able maybe to have a small well or a small tank where the water is harvested and put. Yeah. So I hope that is clear, Musa.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Georgina and Musa, for that question. At this point, I will ask for our last question in the interest of time, Olusanya, kindly, Olusanya. And if you have any other questions, we do have a community forum on Discord. I will be sharing a link for you to join, and you can always ask these questions. Olusanya, are you there with us? Olusanya, can you hear us? Kindly unmute yourself and ask the question. Okay, Olusanya does not seem available. So at this point, I want to thank all participants who've been able to join us for today's webinar. Thank you to those of us who were very interactive, very engaging with the team, did ask questions, did engage us. Thank you for those of us who did share contact details. We will be reaching out to the team. We will be reaching out to you with further details on the questions that you did have. Thank you so much to Georgina, our expert for the day. This has been a very good and informative webinar on procurement and supply chain management. I would like to finally thank the Humanitarian Global team for hosting the webinar. I do really appreciate these webinars. They do happen every Wednesday from 11 to 12 p.m. East African time. So for Central African time, that will be 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. And for West African time, that is from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. I do wish you a great rest of the day. And for our brothers and sisters joining us today, we do wish you a happy Eid al-Adha. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
My name is Adam Mohammed. I am a humanitarian person and a farmer at the same time. I am also a Nigerian. My journey as a humanitarian started sometimes around 2016. In the NYSC camp. You know, when you finish your degree program, you need to go for a year training. So in Nigeria, we call it NYSC, National Youth Service Corps. So while at the camp, I have this staff of KUSO International. KUSO International actually is a Canadian humanitarian organization that is working towards ensuring no poverty and no equality among the community in all. So they approached the serving corps members at the camp, telling them to come and volunteer with the organization in providing services in certain communities that they will be posted to. At first, I wasn't interested because I am a farmer. Then I realized that there are several areas where I can render my service to. I can also render my service to youths, encouraging them to have a sustainable means of livelihood in agriculture. There and then, I key in, I applied, I became a volunteer. So after volunteering with KUSO International, then I then had the interest of working as a humanitarian person. I worked with KUSO International for a year, and thereafter I moved for my second degree studies, Masters in Agricultural Economics at Ahmadu Bello University Zaria. So because of the distance of the place I was rendering the humanitarian service and the place I'm studying, I had to then resign from that particular role. Thereafter, while I was working, I was studying with at Ahmadu Bello University Zaria. Then I also had the opportunity to also volunteer with Action Against Hunger in Borno State. Because of the insurgency, the people in the IDP camp needed humanitarian service. Then I said to myself, I would volunteer to provide that service. After working with Action Against Hunger, thereafter I worked as a farm manager with Agro News Nigeria, and then here I am today working with FX Commodities Exchange, impacting life and providing humanitarian services to the humanity. While volunteering with KUSO International and Action Against Hunger, Feed the Future and all that on other short projects, I then developed that inherent, will I say, likeness of providing humanitarian services to the entire humanity. Then one day I was sitting on my laptop checking through online. Then I decided, I said, no, I need to look at some kind of humanitarian courses that I would attend so I can enhance my skills and my ability to deliver more in the humanitarian sector. So I went online and then I was searching. There and then I came across Humanitarian Global, and then immediately I signed up. I checked the programs that they have. I looked at one particular program that attracted my attention, which is Monitoring, Evaluation, Accountability and Learning, MEAL in short. So I then applied for MEAL program. So generally for MEAL program, I will tell you that it has been superb. Honestly, it has been very, very superb. If there is any word that's higher than that, I will use that. Then for what I have learned, wow, what I have learned actually is too enormous. It's not something I can actually share with you today or the whole of my life. But the things I can then remember that I can share with you is that for MEAL, in short, is part of our lives. In everything you do, you have to monitor, you have to evaluate, you have to account, and you have to learn in everything that you do. If you don't learn, like the famous saying, they say, the day you stop learning, that is the day you start dying. So actually, MEAL program entails everything that one needs in life. So I have learned a lot. Part of the learning from the program has assisted me in my job today as a humanitarian person, in everything that we do, from the inception of any project. I get involved and then I apply all the learnings that I have there to assist in the development of the basis of the project, how to monitor it, how to evaluate the project, how to get the indicators that will be used to evaluate the project, and at the end of the day to term it as a success or a failure, and also learn from it and how to also account for that particular project. So the learning for me is enormous, and it's not something that I can share within a short period of time, but I will tell you I have learned a lot. I would actually tell you, Humanitarian Global, first of all, have all the skills that it takes for you to enhance your career as a humanitarian, and also they have the most of the best platform for studying that I have seen, because it's more engaging, it's very interacting, and then you get to interact with your peers, share ideas with your peers that are coming from different countries. So you share idea, and then it's more interactive, and then you work on a case study that are very much live case studies that are intriguing, that makes you to think and bring out the some of the suggestive solutions that you may have for certain issues that the communities are being affected of. I think I can remember of one of the virtual case study that should be a case study on Gamba community. So my learning experience with Humanitarian Global have been very good because it's engaging, it's interactive, and then you share idea with your peers that are from different countries. So it gives you that connection, that linkage, and also the expertise in Humanitarian Global, I must say, are very much grounded. So they tend to take you to the detail, and even if you are a starter, you don't have much experience, you need to you will be trained by the granular of humanitarian, and then you get to understand all the terms, all the logics, and everything that is used in humanitarian work to say. When you want to study with Humanitarian Global, one thing you have to have in mind is that Humanitarian Global will give you all it takes for you to study, because they have the flexible studies schedule. Even if you are working, you're being engaged. They also have your peers that you can interact with, and they also have some kind of tech platform that will give you the assistance that you may need at any point in time while studying with Humanitarian Global. You know, there is this misconception about humanitarian. People would think when you are working with any non-governmental organization, NGO, or providing services, then you are a humanitarian. Me, I believe that there are so many humanitarians out there. You yourself, you can be a humanitarian. The only thing you need to do is have others at heart while you do your work. Create impact, you understand? Do things to be remembered for. And you are a humanitarian. Thank you.